And whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to my presentation. I'm Addison Pitha, and I will be talking about fluid intelligence training in schools. So, before I dive in, I want to define what intelligence is and what its components are. Intelligence is widely accepted to be devised of two main categories: fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is trained in schools. It's your built-up store of information, how-to information. It's how to write an essay. It's how to solve specific types of math problems. One thing that people get confused about crystallized intelligence is it is not specific facts. It is not who killed JFK, for example. Crystallized intelligence is tested for in schools over here through the use of standardized tests, because they can easily test how well a student knows a certain topic. Fluid intelligence is different. It is how you approach new situations. For example, in math class, it does play into topics in school, for example. Math class, if you approach a new problem on a test which requires you to implement different strategies, different equations, and manipulate them in ways you haven't done before, fluid intelligence plays a huge role in that. It's your logical reasoning ability and ability to draw conclusions based on new evidence that you haven't seen before. It currently is not trained in schools, but it is very useful to our lives, and that is what I'm trying to do. So, fluid intelligence training is necessary because it helps students succeed in math class. It helps students with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and it will better prepare students for the future job market. Oh, go back. So, working memory is a big component of fluid intelligence. A study by described this, showing how working memory has a strong correlation to someone's fluid intelligence, and how increasing your working memory can therefore increase your fluid intelligence is the logical step after that. Working memory is your brain's ability to hold information and manipulate it. It's sometimes called short-term memory, which I'm sure everyone's seen or heard of before. Okay. This is my stimulus material, the NBAC game. It was in Can You Make Yourself Smarter by Dan Hurley. And it discussed a unique program called the NBAC game, which specifically trains working memory, but has been found to increase fluid intelligence as well. The way it works is you're given a letter and a location, and you have to keep reciting back the letter and location of the one n times ago. So for example, on the one back game, you might get an n over here, and then you'd be asked where that letter was. And then you get a j over here, and then you'd be asked where it was, and that's very easy. But then as it gets harder, you might be given an n over here, then a j over here, then you'd be asked where the n was. Then you'd be given a p down here maybe, then be asked where the second letter was, and it gets harder as you go along. Training with the NBAC game, as you can see after 20 or so practices, you can drastically increase your working memory ability, and as working memory influences fluid intelligence, the NBAC game is an excellent way to train students' fluid intelligence, and it would be the ideal way to implement fluid intelligence training into schools. Okay, so the effect on education it would have is mainly restricted to math and science-related courses, because as you can see this diagram here, working memory is the basic component to it. It increases your ability in geometry, spatial reasoning, word problems, and mathematic ability in general. because mathematics is an area that already exists in education, it is just natural that since fluid intelligence training increases your ability in these areas, that educators should implement it in the classroom. This will allow for more accelerated classes, more effective classes, and classes that go into more depth, which is essential for the progression of education. So ADHD, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but to sum it up, it affects students in that it makes them inattentive and hyperactive. That means students will not be able to pay attention as much in class if they have ADHD and might be fidgeting a little bit. This graph over here shows what percentage of students have ADHD. Just an example here, ages 9 to 18, about 14% of males have it. And this doesn't even include those who are undiagnosed or who have not complete ADHD, not complete enough to be described as ADHD, but still are affected somewhat by it. And as you can see also, not many of the people are being treated. So doesn't this seem wrong? There is this ADHD affects many students and it reduces how well they can learn in class, yet not many of them are being treated for it. Luckily, fluid intelligence training can solve this problem. Back to Dan Hurley. He also noted a study where students with ADHD were training with the NBAC game, and after only a few sessions, it was found that they fidgeted less and scored higher on fluid intelligence tests. This means that fluid intelligence tests effectively reduces the impact ADHD has on a student's life, and therefore implementing fluid intelligence into classrooms could catch everyone, even the students who don't technically have ADHD but are affected by it to some degree. And this is an important medical benefit that we can't get any other way as we know right now, and therefore it's important. So the effect on the future job market. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics projects that in the future, jobs that require a college education are likely to rise and grow faster than jobs that do not. As you can see over here in this graph, I'm not sure if you can read the words, this measures in the Army General Classification Test of, I believe it was fighter pilots, the intelligence and job of many people. So up at the top are jobs like miners, farmers, and they do not have very much intelligence on average. And down at the bottom, the very intelligent people tend to be engineers, lawyers, accountants, and other jobs that both require you to be intelligent and generally have college degrees. So this means that these jobs, since they're going to grow faster than other jobs, it might be beneficial to better prepare students for them. Another example is given by Charles Vest, a former president of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, as you're probably all familiar with it. He claims that jobs that require engineers are currently lacking in the number of qualified individuals. So for engineers specifically, we need more engineers, and specifically qualified engineers. There are plenty of people who want to be. And if we raise intelligence levels through fluid intelligence training, we will create more qualified individuals, more people who are intellectually qualified to take on complex tasks, and therefore benefit the United States economically. So, in conclusion, we need to reform education to better implement fluid intelligence training because it provides benefits in the area of mathematics in education to ADHD students and to the future job market. Only if we do this can we really progress further as a nation and be competitive on a global scale with our education. Thank you.
Thank you, Addison. I've got 2 questions. For your first question, how did you handle differing perspectives in order to reach a conclusion?
I think you actually asked me this as a practice question.
Well, aren't you?
Okay, but so one of the big differing opinions was whether food intelligence actually had a benefit to education or students' life in general. There are many people who would argue that it does not, and it's mostly defined by other factors, such as personality, opportunity. However, then there's also a lot more information that says there are these effects that it has on students and their futures. Those are the 3 examples I gave, as well as many other benefits. And so ultimately I had to go with the one that gave examples and was better backed by research and argumentation.
Thank you. Your second question, how does your conclusion respond to any of the other research or sources you examined? This is kind of a follow-on.
Wait, what do you mean?
How does your conclusion respond to any of the other research?
You mean just my research in general, or not the source material?
Your research in general.
Okay, so my research in general, I looked up information about food intelligence, what exactly it does for students later in life, what it does for students in their learning process. And my conclusion was that we should implement food intelligence in schools, and I used all my research to provide the benefits that food intelligence would give, and therefore my argument was based on we should have food intelligence, these are the benefits it will give. That's why.
Thank you very much.